order. In accordance with the open meeting law, the Lake Hopatcong Commission has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having a date, time, and place thereof via electronic notification to the following: the Lake Hopatcong Commission website. We got a flag someplace, Colleen?
Yep. Hold on.
Oh, stand and join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. I guess we want to observe a moment of silence for our friends and people who have gotten this terrible disease, and we've lost a lot of people here in our home state. So join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Would you call a roll, please, Colleen?
Sure. Commissioner Crowley?
Here.
Commissioner Fish?
Here.
Will Susan? McCarthy?
Here.
Wazowski? Wazowski? Pravs? Servas? Steinbaum?
Here.
Stevens?
Here.
Tessier?
Here.
Zochek? Senator?
Here.
Gilfillan? I think I saw him on.
Ryan, you gotta unmute.
Me?
Here.
I'm not.
Sorry.
I'm not
Hirschfeld?
muted. No, I'm not muted.
Hirschfeld?
Here.
Castellan? Foley? Solaro?
Here.
Smith?
Here. Okay, I assume we have no need to go into executive session, so
No.
we can move on to the approval of the minutes.
Make a
Motion to
motion
approve the
that the
minutes.
minutes be approved.
There's a second to Fred's motion.
Second.
All right, any comments, questions, additions, deletions? Call a roll, please.
Crowley?
Yes.
Fish?
Yes.
McCarthy?
Yes.
Steinbaum?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Tessier?
Yes.
Gilfillan?
Yes.
Solaro?
Yes.
And Smith?
Yes.
I had a question. I had one question, Ron.
Sure.
Was this notice to the public, and are there people from the public in the waiting room, or
I have no idea.
how does that work, Colleen?
We have 5 attendees. It was noticed on our website.
Does that answer you, Bob?
Yes.
Okay. With the treasurer's report and the list of bills,
Yep. As of April 30th, we have $207,376.89 in the bank. We weren't able to get the current May 31st statement at this time. We have $62,429.79 worth of bills, about 85% of which comes from grant money.
so
And
that doesn't affect our budget.
correct.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Great. Anybody have any questions on the report and/or the bill list? Would you call the roll, please, Colin?
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Fish?
Yes.
McCarthy?
Yes.
Steinbaum?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Tessier?
Yes.
Gilfillan,
Yes.
Solaro,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Do we have any correspondence you want to bring before the board?
Yes, we did receive, so I'm a little behind in getting our land use applications uploaded, so I'm going to upload those and they'll be available to review. We haven't had any new ones. Then we've been receiving some notice of aquatic plant issues from residents around the lake, just letting us know that, the areas where weed growth has been particularly bad. We received a letter from Dolan and Dolan, which is William Haggerty is the attorney for Hopatcong's Land Use Board. So during their last meeting, Murphy Durkin, our attorney, and Ken Nelson, one of our two planners, attended the meeting as well as me. And there was a application on for a boathouse with a bathroom included. So we just notified the board that there was need for DEP review. DEP has been notified of the application, and we just received response from Dolan and Dolan on that. And the last piece of correspondence was from Senator Bucco's inquiry to Department of Treasury about the total number of boat licenses issued for fiscal year 20, and for I think 3 or 4 years prior, going back to 2016. So that was included in the packet.
And just clarify something for me. I thought, it's my understanding that that boathouse with the bathroom in it, that's a sewered property. That's nothing to do with, none of that sewage goes in the lake.
That's correct, but DEP still.
That's fine. I just want to be
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
Typically, a boathouse I think would be permit by rule under the Freshwater Wetlands Act. But in this instance, because there's a bathroom, they consider it a habitable building, and it requires DEP review.
Okay, good. Anybody have any questions, comments on the correspondence?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, reviewing it, I thought that the boat license information was very interesting. And it seems that every year, except one, we hit well over $500,000. And when you look at this year's closely, I suspect that, motor vehicle closed down in March. And so you couldn't really, I suppose you could renew some licenses by mail, but you couldn't go for a new license. And I know I wasn't able to register a new boat. One of my grandsons was going to get his a new driver's license or a driving test. So I suspect now that the motor vehicle is reopening, I think in a week, there may be a rush for people to renew or to obtain new licenses. And hopefully there may be a lot of money flowing in by the end of June. So I think they predicted that we get 400,000, but I'm hoping that we might get even more.
Yeah, I think people are going to rush to get out. They've been in a house so long.
The number of boats on Lake Hopatcong has really been extraordinary for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we were out yesterday. It was amazing.
Yeah, people are not going on trips. They're staying near home. They've canceled vacations. So I think that boating is going to be up this year.
Ron, I should also mention one other piece of correspondence we got kind of later on tonight that I sent out to everyone was a DEP letter from Olivia Glenn, the Division of Parks and Forestry, regarding the fiscal year 2021 weed harvesting program. I don't know if everyone had a chance to review that.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, I just read it.
Okay.
Is Josh going to speak about that?
He will later on in the meeting, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, the chairman's report is, it's not getting around much, but we had several Zoom meetings and apparently they're listening to us in Trenton a little bit. Maybe they're nervous about the condition of the lake and people's reaction. So in that letter that we'll talk about later, it's probably a direct outcome of them getting a little nervous. But so far, it looks like we may be able to avoid a real budget crunch, but I don't want to be overly optimistic. We'll just wait and see. Any commissioners want to give any comments? Go around the table. I can't see what order you're in. So Neil?
No.
You got the screen filled up there.
Sorry about that.
I could go down the list, and that way it's a little.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Crowley?
No comment. Thank you.
Fish?
No comment.
McCarthy?
None.
Steinbaum?
I'd like to hold mine for later, please.
Stevens?
No comment.
Tessier?
No comment.
Gilfillan?
No comment.
Hirschfeld? What is on him?
Unmute. No comment.
Okay. Solaro?
No comment. Thank you.
All right, back to you, Ron.
Okay, so Marty, you want to give us an update for the foundation?
Sure. There's not too much to report since most of our activities for the season so far have been canceled or postponed. We did have a successful native plant sale, which plays right into the mission of what we're trying to do with the lake, with the native gardens and the riparian buffers, which you folks just hosted last week. Other than that, floating classroom has stayed in dry dock this year, unfortunately. The block party and the lake loop have both been pushed to October. Obviously, we'll see how large outdoor events will be treated at that point, and we have to work with the state park on what they will allow in the park at that point. But, you know, it's still several months off, and we'll see where we are. Advocacy, we've, working very closely with Colleen on your goals for the year. And I have to say that, the elected officials we've been working with, regardless of their parties, have all been extremely supportive of all our lake issues. And I really do have to give a shout out. I know you alluded to it, Ron, but the DEP has been very cooperative and really, I think, collaborative in trying to work both the weeds and the HABs issues. It's kind of like we're under two guns at once right now. What's going to get us first? But I really feel there's been a lot of cooperation. I know you're going to talk about that letter you received. So I think it is noteworthy. And other than that, we just really stand by, ready to do anything we can to support you folks.
Right. We appreciate your support as always, Marty. Anybody have any comments, questions for Marty? Is Fred Princeton Hydro?
Yep, I'm here.
No, there he is. I knew I saw him before somewhere. Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, I have a bunch of stuff to go through. I did forward to Colleen a PowerPoint presentation.
Want me to bring that up now?
Yeah, if you could, please.
Okay.
I'll start with that first.
I'll share my screen, and then you can just tell me when to switch the slide.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I just wanted to give a real quick update based on the data that we collected during our May sampling event, as well as an update on the HAB grant. In addition, I want to let you know that we will be sampling this Thursday, depending on the weather, but we're shooting for this Thursday, and I'm actually going to be out with the crew. We have a lot to get to, not only for the standard monitoring, but we're doing some pre-monitoring, and I'll get into that in just a moment. So next slide, please. So just to go over some of the grant activities. So we're working with a number of projects at Ashley Cove. We conducted our first water quality monitoring event. And I have to correct something. I identified that we retrieved a rogue floating wetland island. That did not happen. We were supposed to do that. I did hear from the sampling crew. They did not get to that, so we'll have to reschedule that for another day. And Donna was actually identified. She said, hey, the island's still out there. And then just before this meeting, I heard from Katie, one of our field techs, that it was not retrieved. So we still have to do that. We are planning next week to do a phoslock treatment in Ashley Cove. Phoslock is that clay-based product that inactivates phosphorus in the water column and the sediment. Speaking of that, the next project I have identified is the large phoslock treatment for the landing area. The material will be delivered on the 12th of June, and we are initiating the treatment on the 15th. So that's about a 50 acre treatment, obviously dependent on weather. But again, we're looking to strip the water column of available phosphorus as well as bind some of the phosphorus in the sediments. This week when we're out sampling, we will do the pre-sampling in the landing area. For the 3 aeration systems, we're working on with the municipalities and the beach clubs to get those installed, hopefully sometime within the next, I'd say, 1 to 2 months. We're working with Cat Beach Club. So we did hear from them. They're very interested in the green clean treatment we're going to do off of their beach. Green clean is an alternative to copper sulfate. It's a strong oxidizer. Not only does it kill algae without copper, but it's also supposed to be able to break down cyanotoxins and taste and odor compounds. So we're going to do that treatment sometime over the summer and then evaluate to see if, first of all, if there are HABs in the water, we'll test for that. And secondly, if there are, does this product help to break those HABs down? So they were very interested in that. I believe they had a meeting last night. So I provided them with some information on the treatment and any restrictions associated with the treatment. Next slide, please.
Fred, question before you go. What's
Yes.
the purpose of retrieving the wetland islands in Ashley Cove?
Well, so some of them broke away and they're out in the main body of the lake over at Liffey Island. So we have to bring that island back to Ashley Cove, re-anchor it and replant it. We're also going to install a new island as well. One of the problems with the floating wetland islands at Ashley Cove, and we figured this out, we've been doing floating wetland islands for about a decade now. And the one thing we've seen is if you really want them to be successful, they have to have full sunlight. So instead of having them along the side of the shoreline where they were in the shade, we've coordinated and worked with Michael Calderio and the harvesting team. So we're actually going to install the islands in the middle of the cove and work with Michael so that he can still get the machines in there, but to make sure that they get the full sunlight. So we have to retrieve that island and re-anchor it.
Got it.
Next slide, please. So for the biochar installation, so this week on the 11th of June, we will have one or probably more than likely 2 Princeton Hydro reps who will be showing the municipalities the biochar and how to construct the sausages of biochar. Biochar is essentially processed wood material that has a high affinity to remove pollutants, in particular phosphorus from the water column. So we're going to show the municipalities how they can use this material. We've also went through and identified that installing the material is permit by rule, so I'm waiting to get a memo and a map from our regulators internally, and it sounds like that was moving forward. They got the map completed, so we'll have that information available for the 11th of June. But the whole goal of that training event is to show the municipalities how they can actually purchase this material and build these what are called sausages. So as part of the grant, we, Princeton Hydro, will be installing these in key locations throughout the watershed with in-kind support from the municipalities. But the long-term goal is to get the municipalities to start using this material. Number one, it's pretty cost-effective. It's not expensive material. Number two, when you're done with it, you can use it as mulch. So it's a nice green reuse. So we'll be running this project for the next 2 years. So that training event will occur on the 11th of June. And I'm hoping to get some of our people to start building the sausages for our projects on Wednesday. We need about 70 of these structures for all the projects we want to do around Lake Hopatcong. And also related with the biochar, we're looking at those large aquafilter structures in the borough of Hopatcong. We're looking at removing the material that's accumulated in them and replacing them with biochar to see if we can use that material in those structures as a way of enhancing their phosphorus removal as well. There's also the Rutgers Rain Garden Program. We don't have anything, Princeton Hydro is not involved in that, but Colleen, I didn't know if you had anything to report on that, so I put it on the list.
Yeah, sure. We had last week on June 4th, we held 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening. We had 100 registrants and 60 participants, and the goal is to install 16 rain gardens throughout the watershed. We have 2 more sessions to hold, and we're thinking we're going to hold off until the fall or the spring and see if we can hold those ones in person.
Excellent.
Do you know how many people followed up to try to apply for those grants?
I did get an email from Rutgers today, but I haven't had time to look it over.
Yeah, I attended one of the seminars, and it was excellent. Very, very well done. I learned a lot.
I attended as well, and I think it's something the Land Use Committee can look into, or something we should look into for recommendations on these site plans around the lake.
Yeah, and I'll tell you from my experience too of monitoring rain gardens and biofiltration systems, you can get, even though you're dealing with small pieces of property, they have high removal rates for phosphorus. So it's something that collectively, if a number of people implement rain gardens, they can really have a positive impact, on the watershed and the lake in general.
It's the kind of thing like that boathouse application or other applications that are pending. Can do, I think, easily put in small applications.
Yep.
Either shoreline, there's a shoreline example in that Rutgers thing, as well as the rain garden.
Yep.
I think people have to be convinced about how attractive they can be and how well they can flourish. And the problem is people love a beautiful grass lawn. And it's kind of a matter of taste and learning really how nice these can look when they're properly done and how well they can function.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
We had actually hoped that had already built 3 of them by now, but with COVID and not being able to have volunteers, we haven't been able to do that.
Mm. Yep. At the park, that is?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, great. A great example.
Yeah, we're going to do some educational stuff there as well as some signage to let people know what they are.
Oh, perfect. That would be perfect.
Good. All right. And so just some other activities. So our next water quality monitoring event will be on the 11th. I will be out on the lake because there's a lot of pre-treatment that we need to do, pre-treatment monitoring. So I want to be out there. And then we also have our 2 Cyano Toxin algo monitoring events. The first one will occur in July. We try to do that one, immediately after the 4th of July. So it's going to be somewhere on that first full week, somewhere around this, the week of the 6th of July, where we do the cyanotoxin and algal monitoring event. So that's what's going on in terms of the some of the field related activities and some of the HAB stuff. Next slide, please. I did want to show some data. So this is showing you data from May of 2019 and 2020. I can say that the good news with the phosphorus concentrations is overall in the lake, the total phosphorus concentrations are lower this year for May compared to May of last year. So the average last year was 0.034, which was above our threshold, and that's what that red line represents. And each bar is one of our sampling stations. So we like to keep the concentrations at or below 0.03. You can see last year, most of them were above 0.03. This year, most of them were below 0.03. So the average for this year was 0.024. So we had lower phosphorus concentrations in the lake, which is good. That's what we want to see. Next slide, please. I'm showing this because I want to equate chlorophyll A to cell counts, since we don't do cell counts at every sampling station, but I wanted to use chlorophyll A as a surrogate to that. So if you look at, this is from the World Health Organization, and if you look at cyanobacteria cell counts, there's that 20,000 threshold that DEP used to use just for the advisory. And you can see if you're at less than 20,000, typically your chlorophyll A concentration, which is a photosynthetic pigment that all algae use, is below 10. So just keep that in mind. And I do want to note that, based on our on the TMDL for Lake Hopatcong, if all the projects have been implemented and in full compliance, the average chlorophyll A concentration we predict would be around 8. So we would be just below that 10 threshold, which means cyanobacteria cell counts should in general be below 20,000. That's where we want to get to when we implement all the projects identified in the watershed implementation plan. Next slide, please. So this is showing you the chlorophyll A concentrations for last year and for this year at Lake Hopatcong. And you can see that even though most of them were above 10 last year, we didn't have the high concentrations that we've seen this year. So if you look at the orange bar, that orange bar is the mid-lake station. And we had an unusually high amount of chlorophyll A in the center of the lake. And so the orange, the green, and that brown bar, those really high ones, are open water areas. And look how low the others are. So for example, the gray bar. The gray bar is River Styx Crescent Cove. Normally, that's one of the highest in terms of chlorophyll A. And you can see in May last year, the gray bar for River Styx Crescent Cove was one of the highest values. This year, it was one of the lowest. And that's good for water quality. But the problem is it was so clear, it allowed all the plants to grow. So, it's like I think Marty mentioned, we're sort of battling two battles. It's the issues with the haves, but when you have very clear water in shallow areas, you have issues with weeds. So you can see that we had, in the open waters, we had some of the high chlorophyll A concentrations, but we had clearer water overall in the shallow areas. The concentration of cells at that station 2, which is mid-lake, that orange bar, that real high one, that was about 28,000 cells per mil. So it was above the original threshold that DEP had, but now it's called a watch. So it's not even an alert yet. And again, that's mid-lake. So I do want to emphasize that even though we saw more algae in the open waters, they weren't extremely high, number one. And number two, we're attributing this to the very mild winter we had. With such a mild winter, a lot of the blooms continued through the course of the winter season. I know DEP's identified some lakes where they had cyanobacteria just go right through the winter season. So we have higher amounts of algae, but fortunately lower amounts of phosphorus to fuel their growth. Next slide, please. This is the last slide, and I'm just bringing this to everyone's attention. So this is Secchi depth in the center of the lake in May for the last 10 years. And you can see that there has been this declining trend in the clarity in May, and that I'm kind of concerned about. However, when I did look at the Secchi depths for this year and last year, even though the mid-lake had a low Secchi depth, we actually, overall throughout the lake, clarity was slightly better this year compared to last year. So the average Secchi depth this year was 1.6 meters. Last year, the average was 1.3 meters. So again, slightly better clarity throughout the lake. And again, that's one of the reasons why we see a lot more weeds is we had a mild winter and clear conditions in the shallow areas that allowed the weeds to grow. So this is something we're definitely going to keep an eye on. And like I said, later this week, we're going to be out on the lake collecting all of this data again. We're going to be out on the lake about a year. I think it's only a day off compared to when we sampled Lake Hopatcong last year. And remember, the blooms really hit gangbusters around the 15th of June. So I really want to get out there and see what's going on in terms of the lake and the phosphorus concentrations. So that's what I have for that. I do have some other information, but I didn't know if anyone had any questions before we move forward.
Before you get off this, two points, things you frequently talk about. We definitely had a cooler spring, and we've had significantly less rain. We're down rain by 50%. And also, we had very windy, rough water, which you've described as interfering with hab growth. I think those three things have been pretty significant this year. So it looks like more weeds and less habs. And of course, there hasn't been any cutting yet. So places like Crescent Cove are already overgrown. Yeah, do you agree that?
Yeah, I do agree with that. And definitely what gives me, of those three components, the temperature, the windy conditions, the lack of rain and the phosphorus, the one that's probably really helping the best is not having a lot of phosphorus in the lake right now. That's the big one, because the problem is things can warm up very quickly and things can just all of a sudden just settle down. So literally within a matter of a week or two, you could have conditions that really fuel a blue-green algae bloom. But if you don't have the phosphorus, it makes it difficult for those blooms to really take off. So the first good news that I showed were those phosphorus concentrations. I'm hoping that's going to continue. I'm hoping that the data we get this week of phosphorus shows that those concentrations are still at or below that 0.03. I think if we're still there, we should be in a much better position this year compared to last year.
Is that lack of rain with less runoff?
That's part of it. That's part of it. I mean, there are other components that have to do with it. There's all the activities that are going on in the watershed as well. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have the watershed implementation plan. We want to make sure that we're implementing those stormwater measures. So when we do get rain, a lot of that phosphorus is being removed. So that absolutely helps. Remember, I described that pattern last June. We got into that pattern where we would get a lot of rain and then a couple sunny days of weather, a lot of rain and a couple sunny days of weather. And that really helped to develop those blooms. And we saw that because it was a green ring all the way around the lake. It wasn't just one spot. So I think the fact that we're having some nice sunny days, not a lot of rain, there's a chance of some stormy weather on actually the day we want to sample on Thursday, but we're not in that pattern that we were last year. So, definitely keeping our fingers crossed that phosphorus will stay below that threshold. Right. If no one has any other questions, I do have a couple other things I would like to touch on. I did reach out to DEP and asked about the 319 grants. It sounds like they'll be making a decision on those by the end of June. So remember, we submitted a 319 grant to implement some other small-scale projects, as well as complete a bathymetry of the lake, as well as do a detailed hydrologic and pollutant budget analysis to quantify the lake's internal load on a monthly and seasonal basis. So we should be hearing about that by the end of June. That's what they've said. The other thing I do want to briefly touch on is, when it comes to stormwater and setting up a program where we make sure that these structures are not only installed, but are also maintained. Next month, I would like to have someone from a company we work with called GreenVest, perhaps give a 5 to 10 minute presentation on a pay-for-performance program. So it's something that we're looking at in terms of seeking funds whether it's through grants or through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund or EPA, to help implement some of the projects that we've identified to reduce phosphorus as part of the watershed implementation program. But it would be a way to try to fully fund some of one or two pilot programs, or maybe one in each municipality, so that, you know, what it would do is it would not only set up payment for the project, but it could set up some long-term payment program for maintenance, you know, to take care of these structures. Because that was the one thing that we've seen hiccups in the past in terms of setting up some sort of agreement, and then all of a sudden people are saying who's responsible for what. If we could have something that is more a long-term plan that specifically identifies there's a certain amount of budget that's required for long-term maintenance, it might be a way to stabilize issues associated with maintaining these structures. So I would like, if possible, next in July to have someone from Greenvest talk about this program that might be some sort of incentive program where the funds can come through the commission, and then the municipalities can participate in terms of funding for long-term maintenance. So I would like someone from Greenvest to give a little presentation on that next month. In addition to that, Commissioner McCarthy, you had a question about copper sulfate, and I believe it was the Brady Bridge dredging project you were talking in reference to?
Yes.
Back in 2000?
Back in 2001, it was one of the earliest things that the Lake Commission looked at after the flood of 2000. There was a lot of water. Like literally the next day after the flood, we went from the main lake up into Woodport. And when we went under Brady Bridge, it was like boating uphill because the elevation in the lake levels was so markedly different. And all of that water scoured the area under the bridge and made a huge deposit on the south side, about 100 yards south of the bridge. And boats were hitting it. And one of the first things the commission looked at was how to get rid of that and what it would cost and how we would do it. And one of the first roadblocks we ran into was, well, that sediment has to be sampled before it's taken anywhere. And then there were concerns raised about copper sulfate as being, you know, hazardous material, which would impact the cost of getting rid of it and dredging it.
Yeah,
So,
and what I'll do is, so I've been working at home, but actually tomorrow I'm going into our Exton, Pennsylvania office. I have some samples to look at, but I'm going to pull up those old. I believe I still have those old folders for that project. So I'm going to find that and hunt that down because I honestly don't remember if it was copper that exceeded the cleanup criteria or not. But I'm going to find that information. So we can find that and discuss it. But I honestly don't remember if it was copper sulfate that was one of the thresholds of concern. So I'll look into that.
I do remember there was some discussion a while back about, well, why don't we use copper sulfate anymore? And then I remember somebody said it was considered under today's standards and the way the world is viewed today hazardous. So I just don't understand why it was a problem it wasn't a problem before. It was like a problem in the 2000 range, and now it's not a problem anymore. There's a disconnect there, and as I remember it.
And that's why I have to look into that to see if there was an issue of concern associated with copper. I mean, you know, to me, copper sulfate's sort of like road salt. That road salt is the cheapest way to maintain roads in terms of, you know, de-icing. That's why we use road salt. Copper is the cheapest way to kill algae. That's why we use it. I mean, there are other more eco-friendly ways of dealing with algae. For example, the green clean we're going to be trying out. But green clean's more expensive than copper sulfate. So copper sulfate is still a licensed algicide identified by both EPA and DEP. So it is an acceptable way of treating algae. And if you use, you know, if the product is used in a manner that is following the not only the guidelines of the state, but more importantly, the guidelines on the label, it has, you know, reasonably minor impacts on the environment. Now, you do have to be careful. Case in point is when you look at River Styx at Crescent Cove, there's a lot of biomass in there. And so that's something that if you did a large copper treatment in there, you kill off all that biomass, you could have a depletion of dissolved oxygen, and you could potentially have a fish kill. So that's why you have to be careful on that product. We want to look at and see where that product where people want to use that product and how much they're going to use it. So Colleen did provide me with that information. So we will look into that.
Yeah, I hope you find your folders, because I remember we kicked this around meeting after meeting after meeting, and the biggest problem was whatever gets dredged out of there could be hazardous, and there'd be a huge cost associated with it. So we did nothing, just kicking the can down the road, and eventually Mother Nature took care of the problem and nothing was done.
I remember that. Because I think we were talking about, do we have to blend the material? Do we have to resample and do composite sampling? And then you're right. It like you said, the problem literally just went away. So I'll definitely see if I have those folders or not.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the only other thing, and Colleen, I don't know if we wanted to talk about it or not, but the sonic unit.
Oh, okay. I received an email from a company who does ultrasonic units, and they were just asked if they had read about the HABS grant projects we were doing and were inquiring whether we had considered ultrasonic, which was in our original proposal, but DEP chose another water body to trial that technology. So we changed to another aeration unit, right?
Well, that's when we did the Ashley Cove project.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So he reached out, I provided that response, and then he wrote back and said that it was possible that they could provide an ultrasonic unit free of charge for this year for us to trial. So I had sent that on to Fred and Marty and Ron. And I think later this week, we'll have a meeting with them to discuss the size unit they would be able to provide, and then a location where it would be suitable.
Yeah, and I'll reach out, and Colleen, you forwarded the information to me. I'll reach out to them as well for some of the questions I had in terms of the unit, what the area of influence would be, because that will really dictate that would be one of the factors in dictating where we would want to place the sonic unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a good opportunity that, potentially could be of no charge to the commission.
Yep.
So.
All right. And that's what I have right now. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions, but I do want to reiterate that we'll be out on the lake this week. Next week, we'll be doing some of those phospholock treatments, and we'll be moving forward on some of the other project activities, the biochar, scheduling the green clean treatment and all the other projects.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
No
Thank
other
you.
questions for Fred? Thank you, Fred. Very enlightening as usual.
Thank you.
And great to see these projects getting actually started and being done.
Yeah, no, believe me, I hear you.
That's the beauty.
Yep.
So Josh, are you ready for, who's going to give us the updates? We got the quarry update first. Colleen, you going to handle that, or?
Quarry's a little bit further down. I don't know if Josh wants to do water level and weed harvesting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was first on the agenda. Under the updates. I might have looked at the agenda wrong. I'm sorry.
Water level.
The water level. Okay. That's definitely Josh.
All right. So I don't have a water level update other than the CAC, what we've been doing or not doing with that. You guys can probably tell me where the water level is. I haven't checked it unless they didn't give me an update on it.
Fred knows, I'm sure.
2 inches above the top of the
Thank you, Fred.
which really is a blessing and hard for me to understand, because in the last 30 days we're down 50% in rain. But I think it's been cooler and we've had less evaporation. That's the only way I can explain it.
Great.
It's 2 inches over the top.
And so to give an update on the weed harvest program, currently we have 2 permanent employees on duty. Both are working on repairs. We do not have hourly staff on right now, just because of fiscal reasons, but we'll get to that in a little while. As far as the equipment and operations, the Lake Hopatcong Commission has purchased parts for repairs on 2 to 3 harvesters for the season, and our permanent staff is working on those repairs. As of last week, they were waiting on parts that the commission had ordered. We are waiting on further guidance from the commission as well as Trenton regarding on start date of operations, assistance from local municipalities for transport of weed disposal and funding to cover field staffing and disposal fees. Some things to keep in mind: the weed harvesting program will need a minimum of 4 employees to mobilize equipment to start for the season. Field needs to be scheduled for the season, and disposal facilities for weeds need to be coordinated for startup. First I'd like to do is just talk about what we're going to do for this fiscal year, meaning through the end of this month. As they finish the repairs, we are hoping by the end of the month to get out on the lake and start doing some harvesting. And part of the issue is going to be what we're going to do with those weeds, but maybe we can even just hold on to them for a little bit until July, when hopefully new funding sources become available for us.
Where can you dump them, Josh? You got a place you can dump them?
We just have to hold them.
Hold them where? In the truck?
In our in our bins, the trucks, whatever. Yeah, and I'll have to talk to Mike about that. But
Because once you fill the truck, you put us out of business, because then we can't use the truck to unload the barn.
Yeah, so maybe they can go on some of the dumpsters or something. But we'll look into that as a possibility.
Josh?
Yeah.
I think for the beginning of the season, and you could correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but the MUA has they can accept 800 cubic yards at $3 per cubic yard, so that's about $2,400, which is a fairly reasonable price compared to the Sussex County MUA. So it might be potential to go there at first.
Yeah, we certainly would take advantage of that too. Thank you, Colleen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're looking at for this fiscal year. Regarding next fiscal year, and I know this is confusing because typically our fiscal year begins July 1, but as probably many of us are aware, the governor has lengthened the fiscal year through September 30th. But in speaking with some of the representatives from DEP, we're not so sure how that would apply to the commission. As far as state government goes, it looks like we're going to be given 25% of our budget on July 1 to operate for our operating funds. And certainly, I think there's a possibility for the commission to either get that or maybe even possibly getting the quarterly funds that you get on a more regular basis. We've talked to some of our people in DEP that do the fiscal stuff, and they didn't seem too concerned about it at the moment. But we certainly want to get confirmation on that. And I think at this point, I'd like to go into the letter that our director just sent out this evening. And did everyone have a chance to get a chance to read that, or should I read through that letter? What would you like me to do, Chairman?
Did everybody read that letter?
Yes.
Mostly yeses, yep.
Yeah.
So then I'll just give a couple of the highlights.
Yeah.
And then we can go into discussion. So, based on, the limitations of the equipment that's been fixed for this year, as well as, what has been expectations from the commission in the past, we anticipate that the cost for this next fiscal year, meaning July 1 through June 30th of next year, would cost $266,000. Of course, we recognize that you have to tell us what you think you want to do. We're just not going to do it on our own, but that's what we estimate at the moment. And certainly we can look at other things to reduce that. One of the things that we've done to try to reduce that, it says in the letter, is that we're requesting that Treasury waive, just for this one time, because we can't do it forever, the fringe and indirect costs, which would be $69,000. if we were to get that, that would bring that cost of 266 down. Subtract 69,000. I guess that's what, 197, 197,000. So, but we don't know whether we're going to get that yet. We're still inquiring on that. Then the letter finishes that, the cost could be further reduced if the towns, or we can figure out alternate ways to dispose of the weeds, because that's where the majority of the cost is. Or I've heard some talk that some of the towns may help with, was Hopatcong, Colleen, you were telling me, might assist with transporting some of the weeds to the dump locations. So so there may be some ways for the commission to look at reducing cost on this from there. But the thing that we are asking the commission, and we think would be prudent, is for this fiscal year 21, is to come up with a budget. What we're hearing, and again, I would want you to confirm this with Adrian or Chris Mattis, or is it Chris or Steve? Steve Mattis, from our DEP finance people, is what do they think that your money is going to be this year from the motor vehicle fund? The things that we're hearing is that the fund is down. They're estimating between 350,000 to 400,000 will go into that fund during this next fiscal year. So that means already you're at a reduced amount of money that you could possibly be getting from that. But what I would ask the commission to work on is coming up with a budget. And even Craig Dorset said this in an email that I believe he sent to you, Colleen. He's requesting that you work on the MOA with us, put in that budget so that we can make sure we can get our fiscal people to approve that. So hopefully funding will come earlier in the fiscal year for the commission.
Josh?
Yeah.
How many people do you anticipate putting on the job beside the two full-timers? How many part-timers, and how much equipment do you plan to operate?
Well, right now we're only going to have 2, hopefully 3 harvesters ready.
For the
Melissa says that
for the entire next fiscal year.
Well, here's the thing. So for right now, that's where we're at. If it's possible, and I haven't even talked to Mike about this, Calderio, is if it's possible, we could have the full-time guys keep working on the machines to get more ready, and possibly have the seasonals run the entire harvest operation. I'll have to find out about that. I don't know if that's possible. It's something we could look into. Without getting more machines fixed, that's all we have at the moment.
Well, at 266,000, can you tell me what that includes?
I can get that breakdown. I don't have it right now.
Yeah, we need to know, how many machines, how many dump trucks, etc.
Yeah.
Before we could figure out in a budget,
And I'd have Melissa work with you on that. She can provide you all those numbers. And then I think if the commission can then start working with Marlon, she'll get all, we'd have to do the MOA anyways. We have to update it with the new budget and the numbers. I think that will give us a better idea of where the money's at, what it's going to look like for next fiscal year. And then you can start the commission can start making better plans about how they want to use that money for the lake.
Okay, anybody have any questions on that letter and what's involved around this operation at this point?
Well, I noticed in the letter some reference to working with the MUA or the county MUA.
Right.
Do we have someone trying to do that, or our county liaison trying to work to see if we can get a permanent solution? I mean, that's really their charge to address these kinds of problems. And I mean, a long-term solution with the skooma and Lake Hopatcong and the weed disposal would be a great thing to explore. I know they're really revenue driven, but they also have some public policy obligations. And I don't know who would be best to do that, but that might be a long-term strategy that would bear some fruit eventually.
I don't know if the chairman or Colleen could give a little info on that. I know there's been some communications.
Sure. So we had a meeting with some members of the foundation. Marty was on the call with the administrator for Sussex and Morris County, and also the supervisors for the 2 MUAs. The issue at Sussex County is that they don't have the machinery to process lake weed. So when it goes to the Sussex County MUA, it's put directly into the dump rather than composted. When it goes to Morris MUA, it's treated as a compostable material. So we did request that the Sussex County MUA reconsider the fee that they charge, which is, I think it's $96 per ton versus $3 per cubic yard at the Morris County MUA. And the issue is that that would require a public hearing for them to adjust the disposal fee, but they were going to go back to their board, and we haven't heard anything from them, but I'm sure we can follow up.
It seems, Colleen, that the long-term solution would be for them to explore getting that equipment, because this is not a one-shot deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if someone could, I mean, they certainly could bond or borrow and get the financing for that. I mean, that should be explored, what that equipment would cost and how much it could process and
Mm-hmm.
what else they could use it for. And, you know, that's really a bigger solution.
Right.
Hey, Josh, how many truckloads do you do a day?
You know, I don't know the numbers for sure. I know it varies depending on how.
More than one?
Oh, I assume so, yeah.
Okay, because I was just going to say, I wonder what, just leaving the weeds in the truck overnight and getting rid of them the first thing in the morning, how much water would we lose, all that weight?
I mean, just from my experience of us, the 2 years we dumped them over at Tilcon, it took several months for them to dewater in any major way.
That's because it rains on them, then they get wet again.
Yeah.
Ron, along that vein, I've been having conversations with a few different groups, I guess. One of them is a company called Nature Vest,
Yep.
Nature Cycle. I'm getting Fred's green vest in my mind. And they had suggested the possibility of using a geotube, which is similar to what they use to dewater dredge material. So it's the same, really, to be used for dewatering the weeds, which would significantly lower the weight, like you're saying.
Yeah, of course, the weight, yeah.
So I'm going to have a call with him this week to talk about that and some other ideas. They also they make engineered soil, so that's another option potentially for compostable materials.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to him this week.
Yeah, we've actually used geotubes for dredging, and this stuff works out really nicely to dewater stuff. So that's intriguing to use it for weeds. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I just don't know how you get them in there.
I know, that's what I was wondering too.
Yeah, so that's my first question.
Okay.
It'll certainly be an interesting seasonal job, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of carbon sausages, we're making wheat sausages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's our next update, Colleen, on your?
So Chairman, I guess really at this point, the letter kind of in the comments is we're kind of putting the ball in your court on what you want to do for July, and if you want to pursue working on the MOA and the budget to.
We want to work on the MOA, we want to work on the budget, but we want to start cutting those weeds.
And we want to know what we're getting for our money. How much equipment on the water, how many people for that 266?
Yeah, and perhaps I didn't stress it strong enough. The State Park Service cannot fund this program in July without firm commitments that this money's coming. So that's why we really need a little stronger language from the department stating
We have
that.
to know the answer to that letter. How much we're going to get so we can tell you how much we can spend.
And
right.
When are we going to get it? When are we going to? We already missed our last quarter payment, right, Colleen?
That's correct. But what I think Josh is saying is that in order to move forward, they're going to need a budget from us, which I think has already been, I mean, I know that we created that back in November, so we can send our existing budget for now and start from that point to start negotiating, you know, where to go. But I think in order for them to provide money in July, they need to know what kind of program we're looking to run. Is that correct, Josh?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
What kind of program we run depends on what kind of money we get.
If I could, you know, and be part of these discussions, I think the key here is that the state is willing to advance the commission the money on the understanding that the commission has a budget in 2021. They just can't get at the money because of the whole situation with the fiscal year moving. So as long as you and your MOU can agree to pay for that, they're willing to put those people on the payroll. That's the key part here. Colleen, did I kind of get that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's like a left pocket, right pocket. They're giving us money to give back to them to pay for the harvest.
That's what we normally do.
Yeah, I know. So I don't see why they were worried about.
Why is this any different than any other year? I don't understand.
You're right. Because
well, the difference is that on July 1st, we probably won't have money.
So,
I mean, if I can, I mean,
the difference, let me tell you what the difference is. The difference is that we had 500,000, of which 355 went to harvesting.
No, we start out with nothing.
Well, it left us with a bare bones budget, and then the haves came. Okay, the world is different with the haves. We need to spend money, which we've been doing, to try to get these grants, which we've been successful with. But we have a lot more money to pay out for these haves, and we just don't have enough money to really work on that project when our monies are being cut and we're not receiving the additional funding that we had been promised or at least hoped for. We understand the state's in a mess, like every other state. And, you know, I read the governor's cutting $5 billion in discretionary spending. So it's hard to know. We really don't have the money to do what we'd like to do and to stay in existence.
And that's what we're concerned about. We're looking at, I think, what, a 12 billion shortfall in the next year, 12 months, I think they're saying.
Yeah.
Because the state, is just not getting the income. So as a state park service, your budget for this weed harvest program is probably close to a tenth or a quarter of my entire northern region budget for my 15 parks. So I can't upfront that money. Otherwise, we're going to be short. We're already short for our parks. So we need some, I understand that this is unusual, but we are in very unusual times. And I don't know what they're going to do fiscally to try to solve these problems. I mean, they're looking at massive layoffs. There's a lot of things that are on the table right now. And I just would like to we would like to have something a little more concrete from the treasury, from the people in our fiscal and DEP to say, yeah, this is a commitment, this is going to happen. That's why we're asking you to let's do this MOA, put the budget in, get this stuff solidified, and then we'll all have a better idea of what the money is, and then we can decide what the program is going to be.
And we could do the budget assuming an income, and then if that income doesn't pan
We have
out,
to assume we're going to get some income. So let's put a budget together that we think we need,
right?
and see how much they'll fund us. Then we can always go back and reduce the budget if we have to.
Because you're not going to know for a long time how much
Not
income.
going to know till he answers that letter. Yeah.
In the interest of time, I would say we should submit the approved budget that we passed in November, so that we don't have to have another meeting to approve a budget. Do you know what I mean?
That was based on $500,000, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, but
Absolutely.
it's
Subject to.
subject to $500,000. Yes.
But remember, Fred, the only cuts we should be, if we have to absorb any, God forbid, have to be after we got our 145 on the side, because we can't take a cut in our 145. It has to be cutting the program back.
Yes, correct. Absolutely correct. I think we should have another meeting of the combined budget and finance committee within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
go over this again.
Yep.
And we'd like to hear more from the state, Josh, from the DEP, and exactly what you plan to put on that water for the 266.
Yeah, sooner we get a follow-up to that letter, the better.
Well, I would say, I mean, I think it's fine meeting to talk. I think Colleen's idea is prudent, just because let's get the ball rolling. I mean, I don't think you want to ask for less money than what you think you deserve, which is $500,000. So why not stick with that budget? Let DEP or Department of Motor Vehicles come back and say that money isn't there. I mean,
Right.
you don't want to ask for less than you're entitled. So I think put that forward, get the conversation going, and then you can ask those questions via email to the appropriate people.
Yeah.
And I think we can get this rolling faster.
I think you're right. Good. That's good
I
thought.
agree.
I agree.
What else do you need specifically, Josh, to get the weed harvesters on the lake? Any other action from the?
I mean, we're going to try to do what we can for this year, and I got to talk to Melissa and see what, I don't even know how much money is left. So I'll take a look at that. I don't know what kind of costs we can save to the next fiscal year just to get some weeds cut, and maybe there's ways to hold some of the weeds until a little bit later. But
Well, Colleen and Fred know how much is left between now and June 30th.
The estimated year-end balance will be about $145,000.
Which we need, but you got money to cut weeds in the 145 or outside the 140?
well, I got to check with Melissa to see because we already took some of your money in the first place for this fiscal year. So I got to see where Melissa's at. If the commission wants to put extra money into things, then certainly we can. It's no problem to get this moving faster.
Okay, let's take a look at it.
Okay.
Okay, what else we got, Colleen? What's the next update, Colleen?
So the Weldon Quarry update that was sent out was just some data from Doug Spini. That was the discharge. They continue to monitor the discharge from the quarry, and everything was below criteria, I think, except total dissolved solids. So that, it was pretty good. The MOU, I think, we'll cover that going forward. Josh, do you have any update on the CAC meetings and whether those will be held virtually? You're muted again.
Sorry about that. I've just been so overwhelmed with all the COVID response and us opening parks that I literally have not had time. This last one we were supposed to have on Tuesday last week, it just worked out. I'm hoping for next month we'll be able to do next month. Though we'll have to move it because it'll probably be July 4th weekend or something. I don't know. I'll have to take a look at that. But okay. We'll be getting on track soon. Just everything with COVID it's all I do. So hopefully soon.
Okay.
Colleen, I had a question on the quarry.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get Murphy Durkin cost estimate for the cleanup of that cove or the range?
Yeah, we did provide some data, and then I believe we provided that estimate of cost.
You did. I think I saw it in the letter. Yeah, you did.
I didn't see that. Okay.
Yep.
Could you send me a copy?
Yeah, I think I put it together a paragraph that then went into a letter. I think that's what, Colleen, I'm trying to remember if that's what we did. Did I provide a sentence or two for the attorney and then he put it into his letter?
I'll have to look back if I have a copy that I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I didn't provide it to everyone. Maybe it was just through that. And if I didn't, I'll send that back out again.
Yeah, because I know he was looking for an upside estimate of total
Yes.
cleanup.
Yep.
Yeah, you were going to provide a range, I think, including an upside estimate.
3 million, I thought.
Of what it would require.
Yeah.
But that was after he sent the letter out.
No, but I did provide something to him that he then added into a letter. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll look through and I'll forward that on if
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't.
If not, we'll circle around and Fred will get it for us.
Absolutely.
So the grant updates, I think we covered pretty well. One other thing about HABs that I forgot to mention earlier was in case anyone is interested in learning a bit more about harmful algal blooms in New Jersey, Steve Souza is giving a talk on Thursday, June 11th. It's a webinar through ANJEC. So if you're interested in that, you can look that up on their website. As far as committee updates go, land use, I think we covered that in the correspondence. Ice retardant, Dan, I don't think we have anything there. HABs is kind of taken over everything else.
No, well, ice
sorry.
retardant, the last official action was we met at the mayor's meeting, and I think we were going to then next meet as a committee because we did get some pushback on the issue of fees. And then the COVID hit and we never had any follow-up. I think the next logical step would be to meet as a committee of this commission, come up with a formal recommendation, present it to the commission as a whole, hopefully get it endorsed, and then take it to the towns.
Okay.
Okay.
The last thing is the audit update, which is still under review and will be providing comments to Michael McGuire, the auditor, so that he can issue the final report.
Okay. Any public comments? Anything we open to public at this point?
Yes, if anybody has any comment they'd like to make, you can raise your hand or I can just unmute all.
Yep.
Mr.
I don't
King.
see anybody. I don't see
Hey,
anybody
Colleen,
raising
can I
their
raise
hand.
my hand?
Oh yeah, sure, Marty.
You're frozen though, Marty.
We lost.
Comments?
I don't see any. I can just allow the people who are the attendees to speak, and if in case anybody's having trouble.
That's a good idea.
So I'm unmuting anybody who is a participant in case they're having trouble unmuting. So if you would like to make a comment, you can.
There's some names on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And
So I know
some of them showed mute.
So, all right, I'm going to mute our attendees again because it doesn't seem like anybody has
Okay.
any comment.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
What else have we got in the agenda?
That's it. No action items for tonight.
Okay.
Chairman, I just thought I'd take a moment and give everybody an update on my participation in the Governor's Restart Advisory Council. We've had 2 meetings so far. We meet every Tuesday. Tomorrow morning we're having a meeting. It's 1 hour, and there are on average anywhere between 50 and 55 participants that participate in this group from all over the state. A lot of time is spent by the host sharing graphs and information, so there's very little, if any, opportunity to speak or say anything. So what I was thinking I would do would be to submit maybe written comments to the co-chair that is in charge of the particular tourism group that I'm participating with. And I think the comments should be centered around the fact that this is the state's largest lake. It's an economic engine. It's a good source of potential sales tax revenue to help the state get restarted, and that we as a region are under a continuing situation. Last year with the HABs really knocked us down. This year with COVID, it's making things worse, and we really need attention. Just a little bit of money, I think it would be in the terms of a plea for money, a little bit of money would keep us going and keep us up and running, would help us remain attractive to the public at large, would hopefully spend money here and bring revenue to the state. So other than that, I don't think there's really at this point too much to say. And as I say, it's limited to an hour a week. They start on on time and they end on time. There's, we've been at this, in, an hour and 17 minutes and everybody's had a chance to speak, but it's very tight. And I think what they're really after is they want to know are there any obstacles, anything below the surface which they could run into. They have a lot of the stuff about COVID that they already know. The obvious, everything you hear on the news, they already know. What they're interested in are unintended consequences, hazards that they might not readily see. So it's a very unique group to be a participant in. And I'm still, as I say, tomorrow's our third meeting, and hopefully things will get a little bit more open-ended.
Dan, I think your suggestions are excellent.
Okay, if anybody else has any other comments, or, as I say, they're looking for the part of the iceberg that you can't see. So if anybody has anything along those lines, I really think that's what they're mainly interested in. So other than that and a plea for money, I don't really know, those are the important things. I can't think of anything else which is really germane.
Okay. Does somebody have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all for your time and your participation. It's great. We're doing, under bad circumstances, we're doing a great job.
Yeah, right.
Keep safe, Fred.
Wonderful to see everybody.
Be good.
Yep.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Stay
Take care.
Everybody.
Stay healthy.
Good night.